What if the global economy depends on Africa more than it is willing to admit? Not in theory, not in the distant future, but right now. Because behind the rise of electric vehicles, behind the global push for clean energy, and behind the digital systems that power everyday life, there is a hidden foundation built on physical resources. And many of those resources come from one place, Africa. In our last video, we explored how trillions were extracted from the continent over generations. But now the question shifts, not what was taken, but what the world still needs. Because if Africa's resources were suddenly removed from global supply chains, entire industries would slow, some would collapse, and the balance of global power would begin to shift in ways most people are not prepared for. Chapter 1. The foundation most people never see. Most people interact only with finished products, a phone, a car, a building, a power grid. These appear as complete systems, but every modern system begins much earlier, at the level of raw materials. Before manufacturing, before design, before innovation, there is extraction. Metals, minerals, and energy resources form the base layer of everything that follows. And these materials are not evenly distributed across the world. They are concentrated in specific regions, and Africa holds a significant share of that concentration. This is not a political accident, it is geological reality. The continent contains vast reserves of copper, cobalt, lithium, platinum, manganese, and other critical minerals that are essential to modern industry. As global demand for these materials increases, so too does the importance of where they come from, and increasingly, that leads back to Africa. What makes this foundation even more critical is that it operates largely out of sight, which means it is often undervalued in public discourse. Consumers rarely consider where materials originate, yet entire economies are shaped by these extraction zones. In many ways, the global economy resembles a pyramid, with raw materials forming the base and high-value services sitting at the top. If the base weakens, everything above it becomes unstable. Africa's role, therefore, is not peripheral, it is structural. And as demand accelerates in the coming decades, particularly from emerging economies, the pressure on these foundational resources will only intensify, further reinforcing the continent's importance in ways that are difficult to ignore. Chapter 2. The Electric Vehicle Revolution. The transition to electric vehicles is often framed as a technological breakthrough or an environmental necessity, but beneath that narrative lies a deeper dependency. Electric vehicles rely on batteries, and those batteries depend on a combination of minerals that must be sourced at scale. Lithium provides energy storage, nickel improves performance, graphite supports conductivity, but cobalt plays a stabilizing role that is difficult to replace. A significant portion of the world's cobalt supply comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, making it one of the most strategically important countries in the global EV transition. Without consistent access to cobalt, battery production becomes more expensive and less efficient, slowing down the entire industry. Governments may set ambitious targets, and companies may invest billions, but none of it can happen without the raw materials that make battery production possible. This creates a structural reality. The future of transportation is directly linked to African resources. What complicates this dependency is the limited availability of viable substitutes. While research continues into cobalt-free batteries, most alternatives either reduce efficiency or increase cost. This creates a bottleneck effect, where technological ambition is constrained by material reality. Automakers can design the future, but they cannot escape the physics and chemistry that govern battery performance. As a result, supply chain security becomes just as important as innovation itself. This is why companies are entering long-term agreements, investing directly in mining operations, and even reconsidering recycling systems to recover materials already in circulation. The The race for electric vehicles is not just a race for market share, it is a race for resources. Chapter 3: Clean Energy and the Resource Paradox. The global shift toward renewable energy is often described as a move toward sustainability, but the infrastructure required to support that transition is deeply resource-intensive. Solar panels require silicon and silver. Wind turbines depend on rare earth elements for their magnets. Power grids require enormous amounts of copper to transmit electricity efficiently. Energy storage systems rely on lithium and other critical materials. Africa holds substantial reserves of many of these resources, making it central to the development of renewable energy systems worldwide. This creates a paradox. The world is trying to reduce its environmental footprint, yet the transition depends on increased extraction of raw materials, and much of that extraction is taking place in Africa. This does not diminish the importance of clean energy, but it highlights a reality that is often overlooked. The path to sustainability is still grounded in physical resources, and those resources are unevenly distributed. Another layer to this paradox is the geopolitical dimension. As countries compete to meet climate targets, access to critical minerals becomes a strategic concern. Nations that control supply chains gain influence, while those that depend on imports face vulnerability. This dynamic is already shaping international policy, with governments introducing legislation aimed at securing mineral access and reducing reliance on external sources. Africa, in this context, is not just a local concern, it is a global priority. Chapter 4: The Digital Economy's Hidden Layer. The digital world feels intangible, but it is built on physical infrastructure. Every smartphone, every data center, every server farm relies on materials that must be mined, processed, and transported. Gold is used in circuit connections because of its conductivity and resistance to corrosion. Copper forms the backbone of electrical wiring. Tantalum is used in capacitors that regulate power within devices. Rare elements are essential for semiconductors that drive computing systems. Many of these materials originate in Africa, linking the digital economy directly to the continent's resource base. This means that the systems people rely on every day, from communication platforms to cloud storage, are indirectly dependent on African resources. Without these inputs, the expansion of digital technology would slow, and innovation would face new constraints. This hidden layer of the digital economy also reveals an important contradiction. While technology is often associated with progress and efficiency, its physical foundation is anything but weightless. Data may move at the speed of light, but the systems that enable it are grounded in materials extracted from the earth. As demand for data continues to grow, driven by artificial intelligence, streaming services, and global connectivity, the need for these materials increases as well. This creates a feedback loop. More technology requires more resources, and more resources reinforce the importance of regions that supply them. Africa sits at the center of this loop, even if it is rarely acknowledged in conversations about the digital future. Chapter 5: Global Manufacturing and Industrial Systems. Beyond energy and technology, Africa's resources feed into the broader industrial economy. Steel production depends on iron ore. Construction relies on cement and aggregate materials. Transportation systems require metals for vehicles, rails, and infrastructure. These industries are foundational to economic development, and they all depend on a steady supply of raw materials. When supply chains are disrupted, the effects ripple outward. Production slows, costs increase, and economic activity contracts. This is why resource security has become a strategic priority for governments and corporations alike. Control over materials translates into control over production capacity and ultimately economic stability. It is also important to understand that industrial systems do not operate in isolation. They are interconnected, meaning disruptions in one area can cascade into others. A shortage of a single material can delay entire production lines, affecting industries far beyond the original source. This interconnectedness amplifies the importance of reliable supply chains. Africa's resources are not just inputs, they are critical links in a complex global network. When those links are strong, systems function smoothly. When they are strained, the effects are felt across continents. This is why stability in resource-producing regions is not just a local concern, it is a global priority.
Chapter 6. China's Strategic Approach. China recognized the importance of resource security early and acted accordingly. Over the past 2 decades, it has invested heavily across Africa, not only in mining operations, but also in infrastructure that supports resource extraction and transportation. Railways, ports, and processing facilities have been developed to ensure a steady flow of materials. But China's strategy extends beyond extraction. It has focused on processing, transforming raw materials into refined products that can be used in manufacturing. This is where the real value lies. By controlling processing stages, China has positioned itself as a central player in global supply chains. Even when resources are sourced from Africa, they are often refined elsewhere, giving China influence over pricing, access, and distribution. China's approach also highlights the importance of long-term planning. Rather than focusing solely on immediate gains, it has built systems designed to secure future supply. This includes training local workforces, establishing joint ventures, and integrating African resources into broader industrial strategies. The result is not just access, but influence, an ability to shape how resources move through global markets. This level of coordination is difficult to replicate quickly, which is why other nations are now trying to catch up. The lesson here is clear. In a resource-driven world, strategy matters just as much as supply. Chapter 7. The West Responds. In recent years, Western countries have begun to recognize the strategic implications of this dynamic. Efforts are now underway to secure alternative supply chains, invest in critical minerals, and build partnerships with African nations. Governments are funding infrastructure projects, supporting mining initiatives, and seeking to diversify access to essential materials. However, building new systems takes time, and Africa remains central to all of these efforts. This has shifted the nature of engagement. Instead of treating Africa purely as a source of raw materials, there is a growing recognition of its strategic importance. However, the Western response faces structural challenges. Building new supply chains requires not only investment, but also time, coordination, and political alignment. Environmental regulations, community concerns, and economic constraints can slow progress, making it difficult to match the speed of earlier initiatives. At the same time, there is growing pressure to ensure that resource extraction is conducted responsibly, with attention to environmental and social impacts. This adds another layer of complexity, as countries must balance strategic needs with ethical considerations. Africa, once again, becomes central to this balancing act. Chapter 8. Africa's Growing Leverage. As demand for resources increases and competition intensifies, Africa's position in the global economy is evolving. Countries are gaining leverage not only because of what they have, but because of how essential those resources have become. Multiple global powers are seeking access, creating opportunities for negotiation. This allows African nations to set conditions, require investment, and push for greater participation in value chains. While this shift is not uniform across the continent, the overall trend is clear. Africa is moving from a passive role to a more active and strategic position. This growing leverage also brings new responsibilities. With increased influence comes the need for effective governance, transparency, and long-term planning. Resource wealth, if not managed carefully, can lead to economic imbalances or missed opportunities. But when managed strategically, it can serve as a foundation for broader development. This includes investing in infrastructure, education, and industrial capacity, areas that can amplify the benefits of resource extraction. The shift from dependency to agency is not automatic.
It requires deliberate action and sustained effort.
Chapter 9. Changing the Terms of Trade. The traditional model of exporting raw materials and importing finished goods is being challenged. Governments are introducing policies that encourage local processing and industrial development. By retaining more value within their borders, countries can create jobs, develop skills, and build more resilient economies. These changes are gradual, but they represent a significant shift in how resources are managed and utilized. Over time, they have the potential to reshape economic relationships and redefine global trade dynamics. Encouraging local processing is particularly significant because it changes where value is created. Instead of exporting raw materials at relatively low prices, countries can participate in higher value stages of production. This not only increases revenue, but also builds technical expertise and industrial capability. Over time, this can lead to the development of entire ecosystems, supporting industries, skilled labor markets, and innovation hubs. The impact extends beyond economics. It reshapes how countries engage with the global system, moving from suppliers to partners. Chapter 10. Risks and Complexities. Despite the opportunities, significant challenges remain. Infrastructure gaps, energy constraints, and political instability in some regions can slow progress. External pressures also play a role, as global powers seek to maintain access to critical resources. Navigating these challenges requires careful planning, long-term strategy, and strong governance. The path forward is not guaranteed, but the potential is substantial. There is also the challenge of coordination across the continent. Africa is not a single entity, but a collection of diverse nations, each with its own policies, priorities, and resources. Aligning these interests to create unified strategies can be difficult, yet it is often necessary to maximize impact. Regional cooperation, trade agreements, and shared infrastructure projects can help address this challenge, but they require trust and collaboration. Without this coordination, opportunities may be fragmented, limiting the potential benefits. Chapter 11. A System Under Pressure. The global economic system is undergoing a period of change. Supply chains are being reevaluated, dependencies are being exposed, and competition for resources is increasing. In this environment, Africa is not just a participant, but a central player. The materials that define the future, those required for energy, technology, and infrastructure, are concentrated on the continent. This reality is reshaping how countries think about economic security and global partnerships. At the same time, technological advancements are reshaping how resources are used and valued. New methods of extraction, improved recycling techniques, and alternative materials could alter demand patterns over time. However, these changes do not eliminate the need for raw materials, they transform it. As industries evolve, so too does the importance of adaptability. Africa's ability to respond to these shifts will play a key role in determining its long-term position within the global economy.
Chapter 12. The Shift Ahead. If current trends continue, Africa's role in the global economy will continue to evolve. Moving beyond extraction toward processing and manufacturing could transform the continent's economic position. This would not happen overnight, but the direction is clear. The combination of resource wealth, increasing demand, and shifting global dynamics creates a unique opportunity. How that opportunity is managed will determine the outcome. Ultimately, the shift ahead is not just economic, it is structural. It involves rethinking how resources are managed, how value is distributed, and how partnerships are formed. The choices made today will influence outcomes for decades to come. This is a moment of possibility, but also one of responsibility. The trajectory is not fixed, and different paths will lead to different results. What remains constant, however, is the significance of Africa's role in shaping the future. The world needs Africa more than ever because the future is built on resources, and those resources are not evenly distributed. Energy systems, digital infrastructure, and industrial production all depend on materials that are found in abundance across the continent. But dependence is only part of the story. The real question is what happens next. Because when a region moves from being a supplier to becoming a strategic player, the balance of power begins to change. And in the next video, we explore exactly that. What happens when Africa begins to build, not just supply, and how that shift could redefine its role in the global economy. And perhaps that is the most important takeaway. The conversation about Africa is changing, not because of narratives, but because of necessity. The systems that power the modern world are evolving, and in that evolution, the continent is becoming increasingly central. The question is no longer whether Africa matters, but how that importance will be expressed in the years ahead. Because when the foundation of a system becomes visible, it changes how that system is understood. And once that understanding shifts, everything else begins to follow.